Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining me today. For the ones that don't know me, my name is Vesna van Kempen, and together with my husband, I'm the founder of Bujoo Education. So today we will be talking about mindfulness in the workplace. Is it a well-being quick fix, or can it be a long-term solution? This is actually going to be first webinar in the series of the next webinars we're going to do in the next 6 months that are all going to be mindfulness based topics related to the well being. And before we start, maybe I would just shortly like to introduce myself. I see some names that I know from some training, seminars, travels, but I also see some totally new names. So maybe first I can say a couple of things about myself and about my husband because we're working together. My name is Vesna. Originally, I come from Serbia. Currently, I also live in Serbia. And in my background, let's say how you say that in English? My formal education. Yes, my formal education is in pedagogy, educational sciences. And I finished master's degree in management and education. I have been active in nonprofit sector as a trainer, as a facilitator, mentor, educator since literally my high school years. I worked a lot with different vulnerable groups, not just in Serbia, but also abroad. A certain time I spent in Thailand in a recovery center in a center from recovery from addiction. I also worked in Slovenia in one youth center. And there actually, that was almost 10 years ago, I first encountered mindfulness and I started practicing mindfulness just for myself 10 years ago. And a year or two later, I decided to enroll myself in teacher training for mindfulness instructor. As you probably know how it goes with this kind of educations, you get interested in one topic and then you dive deeper, and you discover there's actually tons of other things related to that topic you're interested in. So that was a little bit my mindfulness journey. So it didn't stop with me being mindfulness instructor for adults. A year or two later, I finished my education for a mindfulness trainer for teens and children. Later, I also went to Thailand where I studied to become a meditation teacher, peace coach of a certain meditation platform. And also later, I went in education for mindful leadership, which is more using mindfulness in work environments. Then I also finished mindful self-compassion training. So I became mindful self-compassion teacher, which was more related to developing self-compassion. And I have to say, it's an amazing program, totally different from mindfulness, but still it relies a lot on mindfulness. So as you can see, I've spent the last 8, 9 years really diving deeper in the whole mindfulness practice. And the most interesting part for me was that I really thought variety of different groups. I worked a lot with vulnerable groups. I worked a lot with nonprofit sector. I also worked with schools, with universities, with teachers. I helped also teachers learn how to teach mindfulness to their students. I also work with companies in more corporate settings. I work with other entrepreneurs, with children, with parents. To be honest, there were so many different groups that I can't even remember now. That kind of gave me a certain perspective related to the importance of adjusting mindfulness to different target groups. And I have to say, this was especially challenging for me because I come from Serbia. And when I started teaching mindfulness, I was one of the first mindfulness teachers here in this region. And people didn't know much about it. It was something new. Still, it is something new for people from Serbia. So I really needed to adjust a lot the program and the content that it relates more to the people here from where I come from, Serbia, from the Balkan region. Now, today, in the last 4 years, actually, I'm working together with my husband, who is from the Netherlands, and he actually was the owner of one e-commerce company, and his background is mostly in IT. But he really specialized in the last, let's say, 7, 8 years, more in the launch strategies, in the marketing, branding, and so on. So together, I think we're a good combination when it comes to me more being a teacher, facilitator, trainer, but him also having a little bit more that business development strategy mindset. So when we come into companies, organizations, at universities, we really can offer knowledge that is tailor-made for certain groups, but then with his knowledge, we can really make sustainable and good strategies so that the knowledge really sticks and stays within an organization, within a certain group of people or team. So how are we going to work today and what are we going to do? But before we start with the webinar, I would also like to invite you to join us on our future webinars and also to check out our website, Bujoo Education, because there you can really find more content related to the topic that I'm going to talk about today. So often I get questions after this kind of webinars, can you share some exercises? Can you share some tips and so on? So that is actually all already been covered in the last month, like in actually starting from February. So on our website, you can really find a lot of articles with a lot of exercises, concrete examples, really how can you implement mindfulness in the workplace. You can listen to our podcast also that is debunking some myths about mindfulness. We also shared some exercises. And the last step actually for this month on this topic of mindfulness is this webinar that you're participating in today. So in the next months, we will go deeper. In February, we start with mindfulness, but next month it's going to be attention concentration. Then it's going to be stress control, emotions and thoughts, like how to soothe and calm down unpleasant emotions and thoughts. Then it's going to be self-compassion and resilience. So in the next 6 months, we will dive deeper in all these topics. And this month, we started with mindfulness. So how are we going to work today and what are we going to talk about? So first, we're going to start with certain myths that people have related to mindfulness. Even though mindfulness is now a buzzword and everybody thinks they know a lot about mindfulness or that they practice mindfulness and so on, from my experience, if people really haven't went on an 8 weeks trainings of mindfulness or haven't really participated in a long-term training and practice on themselves, usually they think they know what mindfulness is, but actually they don't. So they have certain prejudice or attitudes that aren't really helpful for them. So we're going to try to demystify all the myths that you might have. Then we will also define what actually mindfulness is. We'll talk about what are the benefits of implementing mindfulness in the workplace. Which are the challenges? Here we shared some challenges that we notice companies, organizations, teams, groups of people usually have when they want to start practicing mindfulness together. And we're going to then give you certain tips, advices, offer some solutions, how you can start overcoming those challenges. And then I will leave some time for your questions that you can leave in the chat. So that's how we're going to work today. But in the meantime, if you have any questions during the webinar, just you see here the part of Q&A, feel free to write and then I will go back to those questions at the end. Okay. So when it comes to myth, this is usually the first myth that I facing in my work and that I hear from people. And people see mindfulness just as meditation and stillness. And many people think that mindfulness is meditation and just a couple of breathing exercises, being in the present moment, and that's it. But actually, mindfulness goes way deeper than that. And usually people who practice it for certain time, for longer time, they start seeing mindfulness as a way of life. So first of all, when we talk about mindfulness, for sure, meditation is an important part of mindfulness. But in mindfulness practice, we also have a lot of different non-formal exercises, techniques that we can literally use in everyday life. So we have certain exercises, for example, awareness of your thoughts, awareness of the sounds, eating mindfully, and so on. But we also can implement mindfulness literally in everything that you're already doing in your life, but you just start to do it with a mindful attention, with more awareness, with more presence and focus. So basically, almost everything that you do in your life, you can make it more mindful. So if you're talking with someone and if you are constantly interrupting the person or you're constantly thinking what's the next thing you're going to say, or for example, while a person is talking, you're slowly drifting away, you can practice mindfulness by observing that you're wandering away, that you're not present, and you can return your attention back to the person talking. So that's a simple way how you can practice mindfulness. So for example, when you eat breakfast in the morning, try eating your breakfast mindfully, meaning that you're just eating your breakfast. You're not scrolling to your phone. You're not talking with three people at the same time. You're not watching television, but you're really focusing on the taste of the food. And do you like that food or not? What's the taste? Is it salty? Is it sweet? And so on. So focusing more on your sense of taste. That is practicing mindfulness. So basically, you can implement mindfulness in everything you do. Also, when Andre and I worked at New Life, so that mindful recovery center, we literally implement mindfulness. Was that community was actually mindfulness based. So we implemented mindfulness in almost all the activities of this community. For example, we had everyday morning meetings which started and ended with short meditations, people expressing their gratitude, like in the circle on the meeting towards each other or towards some event that happened. We also, for example, because there were certain shifts, so people there in the community were working in different shifts on different things. So, for example, at noon, there was a gong, and then at that moment, everybody would stop what they're doing and just take a couple of minutes to do some mindful awareness exercises. Everybody who came as a new person to the community needed to pass through introduction mindfulness workshop. We also used it before meetings, certain meals. We also had an option that, for example, if you don't feel like talking, if you really want to eat mindfully, there was like a silent table where you could sit alone or with other people who just want to eat and not talk. And to be honest, when you're living in a community with 70 people, sometimes it's really nice and comfortable when you just want to eat mindfully and spend your meal in peace, especially if you had quite a stressful day. So there were different ways how mindfulness was being implemented, not just in the form of breathing exercise and not just in the form of a meditation. The other myth that I often hear is that people think that only certain types of people can practice mindfulness, meaning spiritual, woke people, introverted people, and so on. So this is this is something that I mostly hear from people who just started getting familiar with mindfulness and meditation, and it's difficult for them. And then they say, oh, you know what? It's because I'm too energetic. Yeah, I'm an overthinker. I'm just such a passionate person. You can't sit still and so on. This is really not true because everyone can practice mindfulness. That doesn't mean that everybody would like mindfulness, which is normal. Not everyone can like everything. Like you have your preferences and things you like and dislike. But it doesn't mean that because you're a certain type of person, you can't practice mindfulness. Actually, usually the people who find mindfulness the most beneficial are the people who are overthinkers, are the people who have issues with being impulsive, with difficult emotions, with being overly stressed, and so on. So actually, mindfulness practice is mostly meant for the type of people who think that mindfulness is not for them. If you're already calm and peaceful, maybe you don't even need mindfulness. Maybe you're already naturally mindful. This is something that I often face and that I really can say that this is not true. Also, mindfulness is not the way how I teach mindfulness. It's secular, so it's not based on religion. It's based on science, proven facts, all the benefits it has. So you don't have to be spiritual or religious to practice mindfulness. At least not the way how I teach it. There are other maybe mindfulness teachers who also maybe incorporate more the Buddhism, but I don't do it in that way. And the last myth, and something that I often hear and why we share the image of Novak Djokovic is actually because Novak is one of the biggest promoters of mindfulness. He practiced mindfulness as well. And I will tell you how I know that this is true. So when we practice mindfulness, we should always be calm in every situation. And also one other thing, we should always be in the present moment. That's often what people think. So this is really not true because in mindfulness, we practice how to recognize and accept all our emotions, both difficult and pleasant. We don't pretend to be happy when we are not happy. So mindfulness develops your emotional intelligence, and emotional intelligence says, as probably I assume many of you know here, accepting, recognizing, and being with all our emotions. So we're not suppressing them. We're not pretending to be woke and always happy, smiling, and so on. This is really a big myth that people have. And of course, mindfulness will help you to respond in a more calm way when it comes to your difficult emotions. But it doesn't mean that you suppress them, but you just observe them and hold them in a different way. It doesn't mean that you don't have them. Also, people often, when they get into mindfulness or they read a couple of mindfulness books, then they all get in this hype of like, oh, be present here now. I'm always enjoying every moment of my life. I'm always just present. I don't think about past and future and so on. So first of all, it's impossible to always be in the present moment because it will be very actually even stressful and hard. And probably you would get a headache if you're constantly in the present moment. So it's totally normal that you daydream, that you have plans, goals about your life, that you remember certain nice memories and so on. What actually happens here is when you practice mindfulness and meditation, it actually impacts the neuroplasticity of your brain. And it calms down the amygdala, the center for fear in our brain, and it makes a better connection to prefrontal cortex that is responsible for calming you down, making more rational decisions, and so on. CEO of your brain. So mindfulness helps you by practicing mindfulness. It helps you to faster and in a more easier way notice when you're drifting away, when you're not present. For example, when you're talking with someone and you notice that you're drifting away, sometimes it can happen that you drift away for 10, 15 minutes and then, whoa, I totally got lost somewhere else, like I wasn't here. But if you practice mindfulness, it helps you to recognize this way faster and then to go back and shift your attention back to the present moment. That's the whole point of mindfulness, but not that you're constantly in the present moment. But you will notice more when you're not here and now, and then you will more easily go back so you can stay more focused, concentrated, and present. So this is something that Novak actually shared about mindfulness, and we kind of wanted to share this quote. It's mindfulness, this kind of holistic approach in life that allows me to maximize my potential as a human being from every aspect of my being, not just physical, but mental, emotional, spiritual. I try to be disciplined with all these different kind of exercises that I execute on a daily basis that make me feel good and present and calm and happy. So mindfulness is not just about being in the present moment and practicing that awareness. Actually, the 8 weeks mindfulness programs goes through variety of different topics. So when we talk about mindfulness here, we're talking about attention concentration. We're talking about connection with our senses, with the bodies. We're talking about stress control. We're talking about emotions, thoughts, communication, relationships, self-compassion. So we're talking about range of topics that are actually part of being mindful and part of being present. It's not just about focus and attention. It consists of way more things. So one of the comments that I get from people when they enroll in the mindfulness program is they say to me, whoa, I didn't know that actually mindfulness has so many things in it, so much variety, so much practice, and so on. And one other comment that I often get from psychotherapists and coaches is when they hear actually all the requirements that you need to become a mindfulness trainer, they were like, well, this is even harder than becoming a psychotherapist because, for example, we need to go on certain silent retreats that we need to do it every year and so on. So it's mindfulness is way more deeper and goes way more deeper than people think. But I'm saying this mostly for people who maybe didn't have experience with mindfulness. So they usually get surprised. Here is just a short definition, just to conclude. What is mindfulness? This is actually a definition from Jon Kabat-Zinn, which is founder of mindfulness-based stress reduction program, an 8 weeks mindfulness program. So mindfulness is awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, not judgmentally. So this part, not judgmentally, is very important. So we are learning how to pay attention to things that we're doing while we're doing them, and also how to be more present in relationship with ourselves, in relationship with other people, but also in things that we do in daily life. One thing that it's not like I disagree with Jon Kabat-Zinn, but I have to say that this part, non-judgmentally, I often kind of explain to people in a little bit different way. We all judge things that we do. Also, we judge the relationship we have with ourselves, the relationship with other people, and things we do, and that's fine. So, for example, while we're talking with someone or while we're doing something, we judge whether we like something or not, and that's okay. So mindfulness doesn't mean that you don't make judgments and that you don't contemplate and think about things happening to you and that you just accept everything with this blissful state of mind. But it helps you to notice actually these judgments that you have and not engage in them. So, for example, if I'm doing something and I have this judgment, oh, I'm not doing this task well enough, I'm doing it terrible, this is all going to be failure, I'm going to make a mistake. So, mindfulness helps you to notice the judgments, but don't go deeper in them. You just notice them, you let them go, you bring your attention back to the task you're doing. So, that's the whole point of mindfulness because you're always going to have thoughts and judgments about things about life. And this is something that usually people find it difficult when they start practicing mindfulness. They don't want to have these thoughts. They think that mindfulness means not having no thoughts, but that's really incorrect. You will always have thoughts, and it's always going to be difficult to focus and concentrate. But what will mindfulness help you to notice the judgment, notice the thoughts, but don't engage with them. And then you go back to what you were doing. Now we will go into the whole topic of benefits of practicing mindfulness at work and at the workplace. First thing which people mostly notice when they engage in the practice of mindfulness is that it actually brings benefits related to attention and concentration. So when we have people practicing mindfulness, first thing they notice, they have a better focus, they have better attention, they can kind of navigate better the distractions from the outside, also from the inside, within their own heads and thoughts and stress and so on. And people can become way more productive when they practice mindfulness. Also, it helps them pay more attention to certain details, to certain process and how they're doing certain things. So that is also one of the things that people find really important. So one other thing that people know about benefits when it comes to practicing mindfulness at work is better stress control. This is actually something that I think mindfulness is the most famous for because mindfulness really helps you to relax, helps you to calm down. But also one other important thing, mindfulness is amazing in prevention of burnout at work because mindfulness helps you notice faster when you're actually what is causing stress in your life, when you're being triggered, when you're getting stressed, because it helps you pay better attention to your inner world, to things that actually makes you stress so that you can know what to do, and you can really prevent yourself from getting overly stressed, overly emotional, impulsive, and so on. Other thing is mindfulness really helps you calm down difficult emotions and thoughts. And it also helps you more in recognizing your difficult emotions and thoughts. And all that leads to development of emotional intelligence. It's not just about you recognizing your own thoughts, your own emotions, but you start recognizing other people's emotions and their reactions in certain difficult situations, triggering situations, and so on. And all this really creates at workplace a feeling of psychological safety. So people feel more safe when it comes to dealing with their own emotions, but also emotions of other people and knowing ways how to calm themselves down. One other thing that mindfulness help is becoming more self-compassionate. So we will actually have a whole month devoted just to the topic of self-compassion. And why now I'm mentioning self-compassion is something really important. As I told you, I'm teaching mindfulness, but I'm also teaching one program called Mindful Self-Compassion. And mindful self-compassion, one important element, of course, is mindfulness. But self-compassion helps us change that relationship which we have with ourselves. So it actually helps in preventing emotional exhaustion. From my experience working within companies, organization teams, I have a feeling that emotional exhaustion, compassion fatigue, empathy fatigue is a way bigger issue than burnout. It's just that people think it's all the same, but actually it's totally different. And it's more related to people who don't know how to say no, don't know how to take care of themselves, are very self-critical, perfectionists, don't know how to put boundaries and so on. So there is way more emotional exhaustion at the workplace than people are aware of. And I have more and more clients with the symptoms and that they recognize that actually they're experiencing emotional exhaustion rather than burnout, especially women. Self-compassion really helps you. One of the benefits of mindfulness is development of self-compassion, which helps you dealing better with the inner critic, with perfectionism, learning how to take care of yourself while taking care of others. And in the long run, also becoming then more compassionate and understanding in a more sustainable way. One other thing that it helps is one quite important topic. By developing self-compassion, you also learn to deal better with your imposter syndrome, because that's also something that I notice more and more popular, let's say popular topic. I think it was always present, but now maybe people talk more about imposter syndrome than before. And all this together really leads to the increase of resilience. So when we work on all these topics, what comes down as an end result is that people are more resilient when they face challenges and difficult situations at their workplace. They know how to calm themselves better. So they are able to regroup their focus. They're able to get faster, better results, to be more creative with finding solutions, know how to soothe their negative emotions and thoughts, have emotional intelligence so they know how to ask for help, know how to recover from burnout, from emotional exhaustion, know how to help themselves. And I have to say, this is a kind of a conclusion or result that I came to by doing certain research on my long-term programs and also doing one-on-one interviews with my participants. And one of the biggest surprises for me was that people said, and I will quote one participant, whatever happens in my life right now, I know I got my own back. I know I will be okay. And for me, I think that's one of the biggest results people get. And that is, in simple words put, that is resilience. So these are going to be topics that we'll be diving deeper in the next months. So you'll see March, April, May, June, July. So I really invite you to join the future webinars because we will be diving deeper in all these topics. So which are the challenges when starting mindfulness at workplace? So starting mindfulness practice at work can be hard because it actually means making a culture of mindfulness. And many employees may not be familiar with it. Especially, I see quite some also Serbian people, especially if you're coming from countries which aren't so even familiar with what mindfulness is. So one of the challenges and obstacles that I often hear from people is actually resistance to change. So many people will not be open for new things. They don't know what mindfulness means. What is now this? Is it something to do with spirituality? I don't like to meditate. This is not for me, and so on. Other thing is lack of time. So what I often hear from people from human resources or people in smaller organization, nonprofit organization, in certain working groups, is that people can practice mindfulness because they think they don't have time. So we don't have time, for example, to go through 8 weeks programs. We're too busy. Some people work at the office. Some people work remote. How can we organize this? We have deadlines and so on. So that's another obstacle, challenge. And the third one, which I find really important, is inconsistent practice. So if you want to see mindfulness work and you want that it's actually a sustainable solution and not a quick fix, because it cannot be a quick fix, is consistency. For teams, organizations, it's difficult to provide that consistency. They mostly think, okay, we'll do 1 or 2 mindfulness workshops or a weekend course or something like that. And then people are going to be mindful, and then all the problems are solved. We're going to prevent the burnout and so on. So it doesn't work like that. It's a little bit, I would put it very simple. It's a little bit as if I tell you, I went 3 times to the gym. I don't have muscles. Gym doesn't work. Exercise doesn't work. So it's exactly the same with mindfulness. This is a type of practice that needs time. And the only way how you can see real results if you give it more time and patience for it to work. You can't expect results after 2 workshops or after 1 weekend seminar. People, yeah, for sure, it might be that people really liked it, they felt really good, they enjoyed, but you're not fixing a problem like burnout or stress or lack of focus or whatever. So it needs to be consistent. So how can we support your team? So Andre and I, since as I told you in the beginning, we have two different backgrounds. So my background is in teaching, in being a trainer, facilitator, and so on. And my expertise is mindfulness. This is something that I do now almost for a decade from many different angles with many different groups. We're combining our knowledge from, let's say, teaching, education practice, and Andre is combining his knowledge more when it comes to business development strategy, launch strategies, and so on. So together, when we work, we're mostly focusing on establishing a clear structure and strategy. Okay, what can work for your company specific or your organization or your team? What is it that you need? We really need to have a certain goal and certain way of implementing mindfulness so that it stays sustainable. So that it's not just, oh, a nice workshop, bye. So one other thing is, so if you want that people really see the benefit, you should approach it in a more, let's say, sustainable and serious way. One other important thing that I'm really going to say is you need a trainer, facilitator, teacher. And we did this webinar also today at 3 p.m. with Serbian people. And now Andre was joking how I always have to be too honest. I say, it doesn't even have to be me. Sorry, I'm just way too honest. You need a person who is professional in mindfulness. I'm sorry if there are people here who read one mindfulness book or went on a weekend course and think they can teach mindfulness. I'm sorry you can't. We need teachers who are long enough in this practice, who've been in this practice from different approaches, who were taught by different teachers, who are, we call this in mindfulness, our embodiment of this practice. That's the only way how people will trust you. I never had and I really taught mindfulness in variety of groups and variety of places. I actually think there's even someone here today. Yes, Sophia, I see you from Zurich. So this summer I was actually teaching mindfulness, some of mindfulness exercise and techniques at camp for teaching assistants of physics at University of Technical Natural Science in Zurich. And these people are not into personal development. They are in totally different field of work. And I really think we really connected and I had a great feedback on the workshops I've done because people saw that I know what I'm talking about. And there were a lot of questions, there were a lot of interest and so on. So you need a person who knows what he or she is talking about and who has experience and who can also adjust the way of teaching to your target group. Also, you need different resources. It doesn't just have to be maybe, I don't know, introductory workshop. It can also be certain books, certain maybe exercises, all the exercises, courses, and so on. So also what I mentioned, leading by example when it comes to modeling mindfulness practice. Lack of time. And this is also something that we often hear and how we usually come to this, like how we usually advise people to maybe start with mindfulness. First of all, maybe starting small, maybe not being too ambitious. Oh, we're going to do now 8 weeks course. We're going to have a weekend retreat and so on. I think that's a little bit maybe over the top. It's great if you can do that as well, but maybe try with integrating mindfulness into existing routines and processes. So for example, if you're having a meeting all together, you can start your meeting with certain mindfulness exercise or certain mindfulness meditation, or you can end the meetings in that way. Mindfulness also has, besides certain exercises, meditation, formal and non-formal, we also have certain values that you can also incorporate, like patience, trust, acceptance, and so on. So there are different ways how you can put mindfulness in already existing routines and processes. So for example, I remember that in the organization where I worked in Thailand, we always started the meetings with certain small awareness exercises. We also had, for example, drinking our coffees in a mindful way in the first couple of minutes of our certain meetings that we had. And also when we did certain breaks, there was this gong when we all needed to stop what we're doing and so on. So I know that every company has different processes and routines, but I do believe that, as I told you, mindfulness can be implemented in everything you do because you can be mindful in everything that you do. But this is also something that more Andre and I combined advise people because of Andre's expertise and my expertise. So we guide you through this what's the best integration process, and also adding some sustainable mindfulness practices. So this is also something that I'm going to talk about in the next block that it's also related to this one. So when it comes to inconsistent practice, so what we often get as a feedback is, for example, when we do certain mindfulness workshops, that people ask us for certain materials later, wishes that people can do after the workshop or training that we deliver. So we build our own e-learning platform on which we have our mindfulness courses. And for some companies, we give access to these courses and these materials. We're also on, if there are certain, I believe there are people from Serbia as well here. Our courses are also on business platform of Krojačeva Škola. So you can also, if your company is there as well, you can find our courses there. So we have different ways how can this stay sustainable, meaning that people can use this not just at their work, but also later maybe in their private lives. And I gave an example also on the previous workshop. I had, for example, a client that she was coming to my 8 weeks course, just not company wise, but it was open for public. And I shared certain audio exercises with them. And then she told me that before certain meetings in the office with a couple of her colleagues, she plays my audio meditation. And then all of them are listening to my meditation before going to, I don't know, they had quite a stressful period at her company. So people will share this also with maybe their colleagues or friends or family outside of work. So I often hear wives sharing with their husbands or the other way around or with their children and so on. So I think you should approach mindfulness in this more holistic way, meaning that it doesn't just have to be at work, but you can provide them with the resources they can practice also outside of the work. So prioritization of well-being beyond work for full mindfulness benefits, it's really the best thing that you can do. This is something that we offer as support to support your team, your organization. I would really like to invite you, if you are planning to implement mindfulness or you're thinking whether you should or you would implement mindfulness at your workplace, maybe you want to start with a certain workshop or you want to start smaller, or you see any other types of benefits that mindfulness can bring at your workplace, I would really like to invite you to book a free consultation with us. So with me and Andre. So we will share the link after this webinar where you can book a free consult with us. And you can share more about the challenges you're facing, your theme, your organization, and we can see how can we maybe help you, how can we support you, and how can we work on this topic of bringing maybe mindfulness to your workplace, or you can just send an email. That's it when it comes to what we have prepared today. So I will now leave some space for questions you might have, for any comments or feedback you want to give. So whoever wants to share, you have this part of Q&A, feel free to do that. And yes, that's it. I already see there's some comments. Oh, here I got that time excuse is really funny since application mindfulness increases productivity and cuts down on wasted time. Exactly. Yes, I totally agree on that. And people usually say like, oh, but we don't have time, we're too busy, and I also think that people nowadays are a little bit proud of being so busy. So it's kind of a trend. Oh, I'm so busy, I don't have time. I think that, yeah, if you practice more mindfulness, then you're going to be more productive, you're going to be more focused, and then you will even have more time. And really, as an entrepreneur, I can really testify that this is really true because as an entrepreneur, and if there are any other entrepreneurs here, I'm sure you need to juggle a lot of different things. For example, I'm working with companies, organizations. I also do on one other platform, I do one-on-one coaching. And then I'm also making online courses. But then you also have marketing, you have social media, you also have tons of bureaucracy as entrepreneurs. So you really need to know. And I'm not sure if I didn't practice mindfulness, I'm not sure how efficient I would be. So yes. So, oh yes, mindfulness will definitely help us relate better to our spouse and children at home. Yes, that's also actually one of the reasons, to be honest, what I often hear from people getting into mindfulness practice. Especially young parents, they really feel that from all the busyness and stress at work, that they're not being as present as they would like when they're home. And I often got one amazing comment that I always quote on one 8-week program. I had one woman who came really, she was really going through a period in her life, and she really came just to be less stressed and emotional. And that was her main goal. And she said to me, she went on a certain party, but because she was constantly so stressed and in her thoughts, she said how mindfulness helped her. She was in the party and she said, at one moment I stopped and I realized, oh my God, what great people are here. What great energy. Just relax and enjoy. And she said that really helped her. And that was the benefit she got that she didn't expect that she will get from mindfulness. So that's that part of joy that mindfulness brings, because it also helps you notice not just those negative thoughts, feelings, worries, but it also helps you notice when you're actually being happy and when you can just allow yourself to be happy and it's all fine. There are no negative thoughts, clouds, and so on. So you can just be present and enjoy life. That's also what people get. And that's not something they expect at first that they will get from mindfulness. Can you tell a little bit more what you're offering in Zurich? Yes, I think Sophia is here. Sophia, hi. Maybe you want to share in the comments how it was at the camp. At university, I got in cooperation with the University of Zurich this summer, and they were actually organizing a camp for their teaching assistants of physics. And they invited us I was invited to do certain workshops. And together with the coordinator of the program, we picked some topics that we could do together. So we did some attention concentration exercises that can help people focus a little bit better. Of course, I did some parts of team building as well. And I also did topics related to resilience. So how can we develop resilience? And also topics related to self-criticism. So how can we deal with our inner critic? And that's that part of self-compassion that I also teach. And I also did topics about how to give a feedback, but more in a mindful way. So this is also one really important part of mindfulness that many people don't know, because they see mindfulness just as attention concentration. But actually, one important part of mindfulness is also mindful communication. But then after that experience, because we got quite feedback, we were invited by another department of civil engineering, and there they did a certain survey at the university, and students were facing quite some challenges related to mental health, well-being, and so on. So together with this committee that was related to mental, emotional well-being of students, we some topics, the format, how we could do them, in which ways. So they shared a survey amongst the students, they picked the topics, we came to Syria, and we did a couple of workshops related to it was emotional exhaustion and stress control. I also did some theory, tension stress release exercises, and we did a big lecture for quite some people, so teaching assistants, professors, related to resilience. But this is a cooperation that for sure we will continue, because we were a little bit brainstorming with them and discussing that maybe in the next months, certain courses that we can share with the students that are available that they can go through. This is some cooperation that we're still working on, and that it will also continue in the future, because we had a really great experience. And to be honest, because mostly the people that I have on my trainings and webinars are people who are into, personal development. I also have quite some IT people as well. I have to say, for me, it's way easier working with IT people and people from natural and technical sciences, because they're not so much in the material, and then they have amazing questions. They have amazing feedback. And people who are more in my field, personal development, they already know everything, So they're more asking, okay, how can I use this with my clients? So I get more those kind of questions. And this is really refreshing for me when people have these questions more related to their own practice and their own life experience. But that's just personal experience. Is the consultation on? Is it okay if I just want to know more information about what Bujoo is doing? Yes. The consultation is online, and it's totally okay if you just want to book and find out more about what we're offering, our programs, how we work, and so on. If you just want to get to know us a little bit better, yes, it's all. I spotted in presentation picture from Big IT. We're doing yoga there, also practicing mindfulness. Yes, this summer, actually, that was last year. So last summer we're also doing something called tension stress release exercises, which we also combine with mindfulness practice. So tension stress release exercises are not yoga. They're a set of 7 very simple exercises that help you release stress towards certain slight shaking of the body. So this is therapy, body therapy approach that we also combine with certain mindfulness techniques. So we also practice a little bit more self-awareness, noticing how your body is feeling, doing certain attention exercise, and so on. So I think it was May and June, we did in Novi Sad at Vega IT, we did 3 or 4 sessions in person, and then we also did a couple of sessions online because you can also do this online. I think more than 90 or more than, was it more than 90 or 80 or 100 people? I'm not sure, but there was a lot of people. Yes. I have recently met some participants from camp. Guys still use the techniques they learned from Wednesday and it really helps them. Oh, thank you, Sophia. I'm so glad. I'm so glad about this. Yes. Great. Yeah, I really had an amazing experience and it was so refreshing for me because this is not the usual target group that I work with. So it was really great. Okay. So any other questions? Is all education English and do you guys work just online? No, we do English and Serbian. Andre also does Dutch. So English and Serbian we do as well. Also, we have all the courses both in English and Serbian. And we work also in person in Serbia. So we did also trainings in certain companies in person and also online. So we are open for both. Yeah, we are currently based in Novi Sad, but we also did some trainings in Belgrade, in Subotica, in Kragujevac, so we are flexible. But we travel around as well. Thank you for interesting webinar. I would like to learn more about mindfulness, so I'm going to check your website. Unfortunately, I have to leave now. Great. Thank you. Thank you for joining and really check the website. There's tons of materials. I even wrote a book about mindfulness in Serbian language. So there is I've been doing this for the last 8-9 years. So there's plenty of materials that you can find online. Okay, I would like to thank you all again for joining. I really invite you to book a consultation with us. If you just want to get to know us, find out what we're doing, you want to have a next chat about mindfulness, or you're really interested in doing some jobs or implementing mindfulness or any other topics that we're teaching, which we will teach in the next months. So feel free to book a consultation. You will also get this information by email as well after this webinar. Okay. That's it. Thanks everyone again for joining and have a pleasant rest of the evening.